Hello. We're reviewing some miscellaneous topics within the Web2PY framework, and we're going to start with sessions. Now, sessions are part of the HTTP protocols, and whenever we're using web protocols, they are inherently stateless. That means we can take a URL and send it to someone else, and they can click on it, and it's essentially a request for services, and the server is going to respond to those services. And it doesn't have any idea of where you've been or where you've come from. It just knows that it's stateless. And so to control stateless, to make an application a little bit more well-rounded, we typically use a logon scheme within web applications. Now, logon is the means of which a user logons and authenticates themselves, and then the server sets a session, and that session is basically saying that you have been authenticated. Now, every other page that you go to will look for that session, and if it sees that session, it knows you've been authenticated, and it probably has some ID identification, such as your username or something that it can identify you. And if it's not found, then it redirects you to a login page. So that's a typical example of how sessions are used in a strategy for Web2PY framework or for any type of web architecture. So we're going to look in this lesson how to set and view session variables. We're really just going to focus on the mechanics, and it's with Web2PY it's very simple. And then we're going to view some of the login sessions, or we're going to look at how you can actually build a logon page and how we can grab the user's name, because Web2PY automatically has role-based access control. And when you log in, you do set a session, and that information is available to us. So this is simple session code, and I really have two methods here. One is called set and view, and I'm going to create 3 sessions. This is really simple, and it's going to be a session name, a session date, and a session membership, and we can see the corresponding values here, and it returns the local. So in this case, everyone who hits the same page is going to have these exact same sessions set. Now that really isn't that valuable to us, because what we want to do is authenticate a different user, but let's just focus on the mechanics for now. So in this example, we've seen that session, we've set those 3 variables. Let's go ahead and build the views, and it's really simple. So I'm at my Pluralsight application now, my default where we do our editing code, and I'm going to create a new view, and it's going to be called session/view, and this is going to be the code arc session-set, and we're going to do another one, session/view. So we're going to create 2 views here based on those corresponding 2 methods that we just saw in our session controller. So I've created these 2, and let's go ahead and create the code for these 2 pages. We're going to start off with session/set. And this page is really simple, because all I need to do is notify the user that the session variables have been set. And essentially, once you hit this page, then those 3 variables that we saw earlier will be set, and those can be retrieved on the view page that we will build next. So this is the session set page, and now let's go ahead and look at the session/view page. And here, all we want to do is to retrieve the 3 variables that we've set. And it's really simple. Just as easy as it was to set the variables, what we saw in the controller, it's that easy to retrieve the variables and now show them. Now, once you set a session, there are timeouts associated with the session. Typically, when you log into any type of account, if you're not active for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, your session will be logged out, and those session resources or those server resources will be freed up. And similarly, that's the exact same case we have here. So once we hit the session set, as we continue to maintain an active session, we continue to be active on the website, then our session will continue. But once we stop, then our session variables disappear or are automatically taken back by the server. So now we're going to display these 3 names that we saw previously. We're going to do the session name, the session date, and the session membership. And since we've already set them, we've gone to a page recently within 20 minutes, we can save this page off here and go ahead and view the results. So when we review the results, we just have to go up to our URL and type in Pluralsight, which is our name of our application. Session is the name of our controller. And set, we've set the variables now, and we can see there's nothing to display here, but those values have been set. They are stored on the server now. And now when we actually go to view them, we can retrieve those values as easy as we set them. So let's go to view, and now we can see that those 3 variables are being displayed. So sessions are really simple. They're easy to set, and they're easy to retrieve. And once you are set, they're readily available on all our web pages. The code is relatively simple. In the next section, we're going to actually try this to do a little bit more is that we're going to actually try to log in and retrieve those variables here. But before that, let's take a quick review again at how easy it is to set these variables. It's nothing more than session.thename, which is going to be the variable name of the session, and then the equivalent value. In this case, we have a name, a date, and a membership. So now that we understand the mechanics of a session, let's look at something a little bit more practical, something that we might use. So I've added one line here, and it says session.auth.user.id. Now when a user logs in on the Web2PY framework, this variable is automatically set, and it's now retrievable on every page. So every page that's within our application now can actually just try to access that auth.user.id, and now we can automatically know who the user is that's logged in. So I'm using one of the fictitious accounts that we created earlier, and I just logged in. Notice I've logged in as Jane now. And if I go to that same page where we just added that code, we can now see. So as I render the page, I can see the number 2, and that's the ID of Jane. Now, Web2PY using SQLite always gives us a integer ID number, and for the Jane account that we've created, the ID is 2. Now, if you notice why I have none for the next 3 variables, that's because we haven't set the session. So if I set the session, which I've just done right here, and now re-render this page, we're going to see those old variables that we saw earlier. So we still have 2, which is the ID, and then we have the 3 variables, which are the same for all people. Those are sessions that are set. So it's worth noting if I logged off and logged back in with a different user ID, I would get a different number than 2, because 2 is always going to be unique based on who the person is logged in. So now that we've looked at the basics of session, we're going to look at SQL form factories and apply that to building unique forms, and then use sessions to hold the values that we store or collect in those forms.